Welcome to the AJ Brown Show, where we talk about all things investing, options trading, and the like. Now here's your host, AJ, whose primary mission in life is to help you become a better investor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the AJ Brown Show, episode 192. Today is July 11th. My name is Cyprian Francis, and with me, as always, the main man. Well, maybe not the main man. Well, the main person of the hour today, but the guy we named the show after, Mr. AJ Brown. Good morning, AJ. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling 100% top notch. How are you doing?
I'm feeling great, and I'll tell you what, my Truth Social notifications were buzzing. We're buzzing last night. The market hit new highs. Trump must have been on some sort of tirade because he hit the socials and he was like, you know what? I'm a little upset with Canada. Let's go ahead and give him some tariffs. The market's dropped. We've kind of been recovering since then. Still at new market highs. I would assume much of our sentiment from last week is the same, but what's taking precedent for you this week, AJ?
Well, it's the same thing. Discussion around tariffs against our trade partners. Canada is one of our largest. Last week, it was Japan and South Korea. And I think people are starting to get more upset about this, right? Because I don't know if you noticed, but Trump also went off on Brazil, of all places, slapping on 50% tariffs on Brazil. And people are starting to question this emergency disaster law that he enacted that allows him to do this, like spur of the moment tariff throwing or tariff applying. I think that there's some questions. So, for instance, this whole Brazil thing raised some alarm bells because he actually cited one of the reasons in his letter to Brazil was, he didn't like the treatment of the previous leader of Brazil. Now, that's not a reason that you should be putting tariffs on the person. And now these ones with Canada still citing this thing about fentanyl, which I believe, that's a topic that has been debunked over and over, that our fentanyl in mass is coming from Canada. So when he cites one of these reasons, it's kind of like, how many people are going to ignore that reasoning? It's kind of like how many people ignored eating the cats and dogs in Ohio. So, I think this is starting to wear thin, especially on bigger powers that actually have. I mean, look at Elon. Elon can't get enough. He's starting a new party, things like that. But yeah, Wall Street woke up a little bit upset on this topic. It looks like you said, it's only in the morning session and it's already starting to moderate. But man, these tariffs are going to backfire, I think, on this current administration.
And it's almost just the sporadicness of it, where it's like in the morning, in the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
overnight. However, prior to that news, the market kept chugging along. And I know this
Mm-hmm.
week on our socials, we posted asking you the question, AJ, have I missed my chance to get into the market? And your sentiment was a little bit of on the maybe side. And it seems as if when we have these events of, let's tariff this country or tariff that country, the market pulls back. Is that one of those buying opportunities? Is that kind of how the market is reacting?
And so that was actually a topic I had with some of my full-time traders this week, which was looking for those opportunities for swing trades. So when the market has this established trend, you can see that we've got an established trend here. Even though I question the pullbacks, I mean, there's FOMO out there, and retail traders are putting their money, they're digging it up out of their backyard. They're taking it out of bonds. They're taking it out of CDs. They're taking it out of their mattresses, and they're putting it into the markets because they're afraid of this falling out. So, I am looking carefully at swing trading opportunities, so buying on those dips, but I'm also aware, and I had a conversation this week with one of my hedge fund. He runs close to a $3 billion hedge fund in New York City, and got some insights from his perspective. As long as that retail money keeps coming in, the hedge fund traders are going to ride that up. But as soon as there's a clear sign that there's something wrong with all that money coming in, this would be a great time for those institutional traders to actually take profits, which would cause a more than just a pullback that you would want to swing trade. It could cause a huge reversal. So I'm watching for that too.
Yeah, and another blurb that I continue to hear in some of the news commentary is that this new market high is being led by some of these big names like Nvidia just crossed the 4 trillion mark, which is leading these major indexes up while the smaller caps are a little
Mhm,
bit behind. And some people are saying that that's kind of a defensive play in the
mhm.
sense of the general market. Are you still kind of seeing that the money's moving into the big names and some of the littler companies are not seeing as much of the benefit in these new highs?
So interestingly enough, I saw that earlier in June. In this last week, you might notice this last week we had, Monday and Tuesday were down days, Wednesday and Thursday were up days. Overall, they kind of canceled each other out. There was very little movement, net movement for this week. And that's kind of ending today as well with like very little movement. I think we're in a wait and see stall. Whereas 2 weeks ago, you and I were talking about risk on. Let's go ahead and get in there and start buying. I think folks are back to the wait and see. Let's see what how. I haven't gotten a clear top indication, but man, this stall is bringing us close.
Yeah, and I mean, we reference this layout, this pattern, as your rainbow chart. I mean, these rainbows are tiny, right? Like
Mhm.
these I don't know what we would call the levels, but like that's pretty congested there.
Yeah, I don't want to get too nerdy on you, but we're calling this a ascending consolidation pattern. So, yes, we are in an ascending trend, but it's consolidating and consolidating kind of into a pivot point. And, a lot of folks are familiar with these consolidations when they're horizontal. It's a clear breakout signal. Well, it turns out it's a clear, breakout signal as well. In fact, when you have an ascending channel that's consolidating, you have more of a probability of a breakout down than a breakout up. So that's again, all of these different analysis methods to look at the market, whether you're looking at it quantitatively or qualitatively, it kind of is hinting at an upcoming stall and possible reversal. The question in my mind is how deep will that reversal be?
Yeah, and I continued throughout the week to look at the VIX, and
Mhm.
I when I look at the VIX, I'm like, can this go any lower? There's no way that this VIX can go any lower. There's no way that the world sentiment is so calm that. And so every day I keep waiting for this pop, and it's not there. Like the fear is out, it's gone.
Yeah. The fear. So I would say that a VIX trading down around $12 or under would be that the fear is gone, but the fear is less. And, last week we were talking about this signal that we got to put our VIX trade on, but that signal never got follow through. So I have not installed my VIX hedging trade yet, but I'm waiting for that confirmation signal So in my case, another one of these green arrows on those indicators that people can download. I'm waiting for the next green arrow and then the subsequent day follow through. Remember, I'm an end of day trader. So I come in after the market's closed. I look for my arrow. If I find my arrow, then it's the next trading day. I look for the follow through. I got my arrow, never got the follow through, and it wound up disappearing or getting canceled out. So I'm waiting for the next arrow. So last week we were talking about VIX trade and we were ready to apply it. Well, the follow through never came. So we're still waiting for that optimal opportunity to put the VIX trade in place. It doesn't make sense to put it on until you get that signal.
And it's more of a question of what's going to be the driver of this next wave of fear. Is it going to be a tweet? Is it going to be escalation of war? We don't know, which is kind of why I continue to go back to the VIX. I'm like, well, there's got to be a pop coming at some point.
Mhm.
It did seem like it was a light week on the economic news front
Absolutely.
in the
Nothing.
sense that nothing
Yeah.
there. And really more of the question being, we're pretty certain we're not getting a move one way or another in the next Fed hike. Although, I mean, former Vice President Pence was on Bloomberg this week talking about how the mandate of the Fed is kind of like, a little bit too old school, and maybe it should be driven by the White House policy. What are your thoughts on any of the Fed activity, interest rates, economic news? Because we really didn't have much this week.
No. This might have also been another spur of why we had kind of a wait and see mentality. The biggest news was Trump's going after the renovations of the Fed building and adding that to his list of complaints that the Fed is not using that money well to renovate the Fed building. And I've actually driven past the Fed building and I see the scaffolding all around it. It's been around it for a hot minute now, but yeah, coming back to investor sentiment on interest rate drops, nothing is expected in July. You could see that this is where the interest rate current is, and in July they expect it to stay there. Now September, it looks like there's there's possibly going to be a quarter point rate drop. And then I'm not sure about October or December, but by December, whether it happens in October or we wait until December, we'll probably have a second quarter point rate drop unless something stirs the mix. Basically what the Fed keeps saying is, hey, tariffs are actually a bogey. And if these tariffs actually get implemented in force, which, as we know from the taco trade, they get talked about a lot, they get threatened a lot, and then they get postponed till August 1st. So, if the tariffs actually go into force, right, that's an inflation, instigator, and the Fed may not want to drop rates on that. So they keep leaving the door open and using that verbiage that says, "Hey, we're on the defensive track. We're not on the offensive track like we were when everything was stable. We're going to just react as the market gives up and don't pay attention to how we're doing our conference rooms."
And another of the, this week's news, Trump was calling for 300 basis point cut on the Fed, and that's quite a drastic message differential from what the Fed is saying, and it may be causing some of the stir of, we don't know what to expect because we got a lot of voices telling us. I did see you pull up the quantitative easing,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
This
and
is this is quantitative tightening, and I was paying attention. The Fed, had the massive. It was, I think they peaked out around what? It looks like April of 2022 was their peak, almost $9 trillion in IOUs to the US government. They've done a pretty good job. This latest number is down at 6.6 trillion. So, if you remember speeches from 3 years ago, Jerome Powell wanted to get it down to 5 trillion. So they still have about 1.6 trillion to sell off in the form of bonds. And that is actually a way of reducing inflation, is to flood the bond market. It's kind of a backward way. It's a way that we don't have much experience with because they only started doing it in 2008, playing around with bond sales from the Fed and all. But yeah, I could see a public relations thing where they actually do drop interest rates, but then at the same time they do quantitative tightening. And those two strategies, so many people pay attention to interest rate drops and don't really, unless they watch our show, don't pay attention to quantitative tightening. And so I could see the Fed, just to save face and to get like Trump off their back, dropping rates by quarter points, but then accelerating quantitative tightening, which could actually contradict. It would be an interesting thing that hasn't been tried before, but they're getting so much pressure because Trump is such a good marketer and can get, everybody sold on a story, that there'd be so much pressure on the Fed that they'd be like, okay, we're going to submit, we're going to lower an interest rate, but then they'll probably do some quantitative tightening at the same time, which would kind of contradict, but in a weird way. So it's kind of like one of those games where you're trying to balance the marble and not have it go off the edge. I think that's what the Fed is in right now. I
And
don't envy them, man.
it's always about what's the future looking like. Like they may lower rates, but he could drop a certain word in his speech that could
Rhetoric
override
is a powerful tool.
the cut. Yeah. um. All right. So then,
The scoop, I
so
gotta say one thing. The scoop is we pay so much time paying attention to the broad market because the broad market, drives a lot of the individual symbols that we would be trading on. But if you're watching this show, you've got that tool chest of all your different option strategies. And so we just want to know what's happening because then we can apply the correct option strategy and in our personal portfolios come out on top. So I just want to remind everybody, there's what's happening in the broad market, and then there's what's happening in our portfolio. So we only want to know what's happening in the broad market so we can adjust our trading accordingly.
yeah, and as some of our newer investors out there who might be tuning in, it's easy to have FOMO, right? With the markets hitting new highs. Am I missing out? Everyone else is making so much money. Nvidia just hit 4 trillion. I need to get in. I need to get in. And I think what you and the team at Trading Trader do a good job of is helping educate folks on the 27 different ways. And now time passing is probably one of those good strategies because we continue to hit this ceiling. And so with that, let's go ahead and invite everybody to check out some of these strategies. And so I'm going to go ahead and throw AJ's quick links into the chat where you can go follow us on social. You can check out AJ's free indicator suite as you reference on that VIX trade. We've got blue and red arrows that are kind of helping with some of the follow through there. You can get access to that, in this free indicators section. We've got our socials. We've got AJ's free workshop. We've got some custom coaching and the trading trainer community in general. There's a variety of different programs for you to check out. And so, it's kind of been one of those weeks similar to last week where we're just kind of hitting new highs. And when we have opportunities of some slowness like that, it gives us a chance to tweak some of the other ways that we as investors approach the market, try and make money, try and save money, try and avoid certain loopholes and things like that. And so we've got a very special guest on today with us that's going to help us with some of these nuances. I know that this is a very novice topic for me, and I'm sure that our audience, the active, not so active, the successful traders out there would want to learn some of these hacks. So we're going to take a short break here, and then we'll be back with our special guest to talk about saving tax dollars, saving money on, your investing strategies, and not having to pay the government. So we've got a very unique perspective on that, and we'll dig into it. So sit tight, folks. We'll be back in a second.
Jiffy.
We'll be back in a jiffy.
I get it. You're afraid of trading in the markets. Guess what? I've got your answer. I've got 4 strategies I'm going to give you along with the tools to make it super easy. I'm going right home, giving you the webinar. I need you to sign up below and meet me in a few minutes.
All right, AJ. So I'm curious to ask you, having run Trading Trainer for 20 plus years now, how often do you have members, guests ask you about the best way to approach trading and taxes and savings? I'm assuming that's a fairly popular question.
Oh, absolutely. Because what investors soon and quickly realize is that some of the highest taxation is done on trading profits, especially for short term capital gains, trades that we do, most of us do, that don't last. The time to fall into the long term, and even long term capital gains is a big hit. So, yeah, I get that question all the time. How do I structure my trading? What do I do so that I could be a, full-time trader and keep some of that money I make?
And what's interesting about the answer and the solution is how complex our tax code is.
Oh,
And if you know what you're doing and you're working with the right person, you can get the best advantage and the best shortcuts to that. And so, with that, let's go ahead and bring in our special guest for the day, Miss Rachel Farris, CPA, pro expert at helping some of these lovely investors all around the world maximize these profits through these tax concepts. Rachel, welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing great. Thank you both for having me on.
yeah.
Well, and so let me ask you, Rachel, what's the most common question that you first get from some traders that, want to know what they can do or with the best approach to, saving, in these tax concepts?
Yeah, so I focus on helping US citizens relocate to Puerto Rico to take advantage of the tax incentives. So generally, that looks like a 4% income tax rate and a 0% tax rate on capital gains, interest, and dividends. So when people come to me specifically, they often think it's a scam. I always get the things, well, can I just set up a VPN there? How is that different than moving to Singapore or the Cayman Islands? I heard it's a scam. I heard people are getting tracked down by the IRS or the DOJ. Is this actually a legit program? And the true answer is yes. It is literally one of the only places that US citizens can actually move, not renounce their citizenship, and take advantage of these unreal tax savings. Most cases, people actually need to renounce their US citizenship if you're taking advantage of the Cayman Islands, Singapore, Dubai, or these very popular tax hotspots because of the fact that US citizens are taxed on our worldwide income. And so, because Puerto Rico is a territory and they don't have voting representation in Congress, as we all know, no taxation without representation, they're able to actually create their own tax laws, and you are able to keep your US citizenship by moving there.
And
You know,
is it?
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I would say,
No,
is
no,
this
you
new?
go. You go.
Is this new? How long has this been around?
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
was introduced in 2012 originally with Acts 20 and 22. So it really came from an economic instability point of Puerto Rico, where they wanted to attract entrepreneurship, capital, and investors to the island. So they started off with some base level benefits. And then after Hurricane Maria, and as kind of the economy has started to shift over the last decade or so, they renewed the benefits and started with Act 60, which are the current level benefits right now. And it's been very tried and true. There's over around 6 to 7,000 people that have already taken advantage of these benefits on the island. I believe there's about 7 to 10,000 decrees currently being processed by the Puerto Rican government. So we're getting more and more people moving down as we're seeing this political instability, a little bit of market volatility, because people want to use tax planning as financial planning almost. It's a great way to lock in a specific rate with the government with a decree for 10 to 15 years, and you can exactly assume how much money you're going to save. So it's been really, really, really popular.
So wait. I'm dumb. What is decree? You said 7 to
Yeah.
10,000 decrees. That means applications?
Yeah, so when you move down to Puerto Rico, first of all, you need to establish residency and you'll submit this application where there's a bunch of them, but the two main ones are for export services, so a business decree that is exporting services off the island of Puerto Rico, and the one that will apply to most of your viewers is the individual resident investor decree. So that is for people that are taking advantage of interest, dividends, short and long-term capital gains, and you apply for this decree with the government. Most of the time I see this accepted. Very few times have I seen it be rejected, mostly because someone has not filled out the application correctly. But you're able then to take advantage of anything that's sourced to Puerto Rico. So 0% tax on your short and long-term capital gains, 0% tax on interest and dividends that are sourced back to Puerto Rico on everything that is post-move. So that's a very key differentiating factor. So let's say you've owned Apple stock for 10 years, you move to Puerto Rico, and you live in Puerto Rico for 2 years after, and then you sell it. Well, you're not gonna get that whole 12 years of appreciation considered as a Puerto Rico capital gain. That first 10 years you're living in the US is still going to be a US capital gain. But those 2 years after, we'll mark the date that you actually moved down. That's going to be Puerto Rico sourced. There's some interesting tax rules in Puerto Rico as well, where if you do live there for 10 years after, those long-term capital gains that you've held before you moved can then be taxed at a 5% rate. But most people I see don't end up staying the full 10 years. I see more in that 3 to 7 year range.
Okay. So what you're doing is you're helping people move permanently to Puerto Rico, or
Yeah,
are people part-time residents of Puerto Rico? How does that work?
so you need to meet three tests. It's the presence test, the tax home test, and the closer connection test. The presence test is kind of what everyone always talks about, 183 days. There's a few other IRS rules that you can do to make that, but most of the time it looks like 183 days for people. The tax home test is where you're doing business from. So are you making your trades while you're in Puerto Rico? Are you running your business from Puerto Rico? Or do you have a W 2 job that's in San Francisco that you're flying back to every single week to work in person, right? The third test is the closer connection test. I like to say this is where your heart really lies. So they want to show that you've moved to Puerto Rico, right? So that means joining a church in Puerto Rico. That means, owning a home in Puerto Rico. You do need to buy a home within 2 years. That means not having a home available for use in the US, so renting out your current home. That means bringing your belongings down to Puerto Rico. That means if you're married and you have kids, they should be in Puerto Rico with you. You should not be having your wife staying in New York and you're down in Puerto Rico. You need to make it look like you actually moved, that the things that matter to you are down there and that you've established a life down there. Once you've done that, I generally recommend people stay down there for about 3 years at a minimum. That's not a strict rule, but there are a lot of IRS and government statutes around residency that circulate around a 3 year rule. And so once you've hit your 3 years, you've made your money, you can decide to leave if you want. A lot of people actually end up staying because they love the island life. There's a huge community of investors down there. So you get a lot of like-minded people that are willing to make that same sacrifice as you. So you're getting great ideas, new investment opportunities, and everyone I know has really grown their wealth just because of the community and the connections that you build there as well.
Now, Rachel, what about, this is going to sound really dumb, but what about, we always hear every season that Puerto Rico is hit by hurricanes. Do people want to put themselves into that peril just to get tax benefits? I don't know. What's the
Yeah.
thought on that?
Well, I actually spend around 4 months of my year down there, mind you, not hurricane season. But to be honest, I think what I see a lot of people doing is during the really warm months and hurricane season, they just go live somewhere else. They go on vacation for a bit. With the individual resident investor decree, the idea behind it is that you need to initiate trades when you are physically located in Puerto Rico. So you need to
Oh.
buy or sell while you are physically on the island. When you go off and you go on vacation, as long as you're not hitting that button on your computer, that is completely fine. You can go spend your time off the island for trading and investing purposes, and that's going to be all right. You just need to make sure that you are physically on the island of Puerto Rico when you do that. So feel free to take hurricane season off. take a little bit of a break from trading, right? The other solution that I see with people is if you have the means to do it, I tend to book flights. So what I do is I book one of those refundable flights. If I hear there's a hurricane coming every single day that week, cancel my flight, cancel my flight, cancel my flight. If I need to leave the island, there's some great airports on the island. So it's not something you necessarily need to worry about. You can get off the island pretty quickly. I would just recommend booking your flights in advance and having all that cancellation policy on them.
Well, now the one thing I know about Puerto Rico is that they invested over the last like 15 plus years in like super great internet connections. Am I right about that?
Yeah, so actually, I haven't had a huge issue with internet connection. What I recommend people do is there's two big providers. There's Claro and I believe Liberty's the other one. I would recommend getting both. If one happens to go down, I've never had a situation where both have gone down, and it's pretty cheap down there. The cost of living in Puerto Rico is much less than what you would see in the United States. So you can easily do things like that, especially with the additional money you're saving on your taxes. It's literally a non-negotiable. You can live a higher standard of life. You can have as many Wi-Fi lines as you want. And yeah, there hasn't been huge issues. I will say there are sometimes like electricity blackouts. The grid does get a little overloaded, but most buildings actually have generators. So my power in my building has never gone out. We have two generators and it pops on right away. I think we can go almost a week without having any electricity grid because of the generators. So for most people that are expats, they end up living in communities and buildings like that where they do have kind of those extra amenities. So it's never really been an issue for people that have moved down from the States.
Now, this seems like, we're talking about folks uprooting everything for their tax benefits. What sort of objections, besides the fact that that's like a big commitment, how should folks think about this?
Yeah, I would think of it as a way to get financial freedom, right? You think about how much money goes to the government every single year in taxes. I know there's probably not a single person that's excited when they either have to write that check or whatever it is when they see the withholding coming out of their account, right? Ultimately, this is one of the for sure ways where you can look at your plan for the next 10 to 15 years and realize how much you're actually going to be able to save on taxes. If you look at how much you paid last year, look at how much you paid on your capital gains tax, looks how much you paid on any type of income tax, and then translate that to a 4% corporate income tax rate and a 0% rate on your capital gains. I honestly think it's a non-negotiable. A bit of the pushback that I get is that people are worried that one, hey, is this actually benefiting the Puerto Rican community? And then
That's a
two,
good
yeah,
question.
it is a really great question, and I'll address that in a second. And then two, can the government take away the benefits? What types of compliance are we worried
That's
about,
a good
right?
question
So for the
too.
first one, I mean, they're thinking about renewing the benefits until 2055 at this point. So it's been really attractive to a lot of people in the Puerto Rican community. It's developed so many new jobs on the island. It's brought so much capital and wealth to the island that they've really seen substantial change. Obviously, there's always going to be pushback from certain parties, but as a whole, everyone that I've talked to has said that the job creation and the training people in specialized roles, they're helping open up new industries that Puerto Rico didn't have before. On
Hmm.
the compliance side of things, I get the fear, right? Is the IRS going to come after you? Is Puerto Rico going to come after you?
Yeah.
And I think that really comes into doing things correctly the first time around. Don't cut corners, right? You want to make sure that you have someone with specialized advice on your side that has that knowledge to be able to guide you through the process. Get clients all the time that come to my door. They're like, hey, I've been doing XYZ for 2 or 3 years. Can you fix my problem now? The IRS just sent me a message. Uh, that's a lot harder to deal with than if you're planning to move to Puerto Rico from the get go and you hire someone like me or a lawyer to help guide you through that process because we're able to structure everything to make sure you're meeting those three tests that I mentioned correctly, you're structuring your investments correctly. And not only is it for compliance purposes, but also helping you take advantage of niche tax loopholes where you could save even more on municipal taxes. We can figure out new investments for you, opportunity zones. There's tons of benefits to actually investing in Puerto Rican companies as well. One thing I always like to mention is that if you do happen to get distributions or dividends from a Puerto Rico company, again, taxed at 0%. So it's one of those things where they're trying to attract a lot of investment down there, and they're opening up things that the US will never consider because of that.
Rachel, is there a way uh, that I can go through maybe my last year or two with somebody and they could show me all the places I could have saved to kind of build that case for me if I'm on the fence to
Yeah.
understand if it does make sense moving forward to take this big step?
1,000%. So the two options I'll kind of give you are I offer consultations. So if you want to go to my website, rachelfarriscpa.com, we can hop on a call. And if this is something you're legitimately considering, we can go through that entire thing, go through your situation and figure out, hey, how much could you have saved? I'm actually in the process of developing a calculator right now as well. So I
Oh,
can
that
eventually
would be
share that
cool.
back to you so you can plug in your own information. And then the other thing is, I have this education course at maximizewealth.com. And this has 2 free modules in our free preview where it'll walk you through basic eligibility. It'll walk you through a case study of kind of how someone I worked with has saved money. And you can kind of envision yourself in those shoes and just do the quick calculations yourself as well. This course walks you through absolutely everything you need to know beginning to end, from strategy all the way through compliance. I always like to say the 80-20 rule. 80% of people have the exact same situation or a very similar situation. 20% of people have a different situation. Those 20% should come to me directly. If you're just day trading, you're just a normal investor, you're someone that doesn't have multiple international entities and we're dealing with really complicated structures, I would 100% recommend taking this course or even just looking at the free preview just to see if you might be able to benefit from Act 60.
The I guess what's coming up in my mind is, I live here in Washington, D.C., so I get all sorts of opinions, and
Mhm.
there is this, like, grassroots push to make Puerto Rico a 51st state, right? Should the pendulum swing in the opposite direction, what then, right? Wha how do you navigate all this changing stuff?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. I will say I think the likelihood of that's really low. That's not what the Puerto
I
Rican
do
community
too.
wants. So I would argue I don't think that's going to happen. But to address the part about being kind of tumultuous in a political environment, right? When you apply for your decree and you sign the decree with the government, you automatically get those benefits depending on your decree for 10 to 15 years. So no
Okay.
matter what happens politically, unless it becomes a state, then you will have those benefits locked in. So even if the Puerto Rican government decides, hey, we're going to get rid of Act 60, we're not going to renew it, you are still have a locked in contract with them for that 10 to 15 years. So
Uh,
people that are on those Acts 20 and 22 from beforehand, a lot of them
yeah.
are still at the end of their contracts right now, even though Act 60 has
Ah.
changed, right? If they want to take advantage of Act 60 because they thought it was a better incentive, you're allowed to upgrade. But if they actually really liked what they were getting under Acts 20 and 22, even though Act 60 has technically replaced Acts 20 and 22, we still have people on those that didn't decide to switch over. So it is legally binding. It is a contract with the government. That is a way to kind of
Ah.
navigate yourself through this instability. I think another great way is, again, focus working with someone that has an active pulse on the situation, or following them on LinkedIn, finding people that are voices in that community. What Puerto Rico likes to do is they like to issue memos in Spanish and then a few months later issue them in English. So it's really great to have someone that is able to interpret those right off the bat, because if there are changes, you want to know about them stat. You don't want to learn about them a year down the line when you're filing your return or your annual report and then you're panicking because you've been doing something wrong the whole time.
Say some of my folks decide, hey, this is right for me. I already am a full-time trader. I've got some businesses as well that are all online. Maybe I should, think about moving to Puerto Rico. Yeah. How, um, yeah, I guess they'd want to get in touch with you so that they could make sure that they get all the benefits and don't miss any of the T's being crossed and the I's being dotted.
Yeah, no, 100%. Again, I would say if you have a pretty basic situation, if you're just trading and you're not moving down a large business or you're a one-man business, I would look at maximizewealth.com and look at that education course. It is a great
Sure.
option. If not, you can go to my website and we can talk through it on a consultation. I do offer free 30-minute consultations to people.
Oh,
I will say that A really exciting thing about this is that it's such an empowering way. I don't know anyone that's moved down and has regretted it, honestly. It is a way to save automatically. If you are a single person, you have young kids, you're close to retirement, it applies to anyone across the board. If you have a family, I get it. It's hard to uproot your family and move down. There are some really great private schools and networks down there for families, but it's one of those things where you're setting yourself up for financial success in the future. If you just save down there for a few years, however many years you plan to stay, you can live a better quality of life. You can retire earlier. You can channel more money back into investing and make
Mhm.
even more money. You can channel money into a new business venture. There's a lot of really great options here for you. And I don't think you can find this many other places. And so if you're sitting out there and you're thinking about, hey, I always complain about my tax bill every single year, this is something that you can consider. It doesn't need to be for the rest of your life until you die, right? This is something that you can use for 3, 5, 10, however many years you want to really be able to create stability and freedom for yourself.
I mean, being able to parlay that additional, whatever it be, 25, 30, 45% back into your investing, that's
Yeah,
significant. That can be, think about that for those of you folks out there. Think about that whole thing that you've seen a million times, which is, would you take a penny that doubles every day for 30 days versus take $1 million? If you could, continue to take that money that you usually pay off to the IRS and put that back into your investing, it turns out that exponentially, at the end of 5 or 10 years, that's like millions of dollars that are
it really
now
is.
yours. So it totally makes sense. But visit Rachel's website. Do you have to learn Spanish?
No, you don't. So a lot of people also ask me that. The communities that most expats move to are entirely English speaking. The big ones are like Dorado Resort, Palmas del Mar. They have nice resorts, it's beautiful, and everyone there is English speaking. There's tons of people that have moved down for the exact same reasons. And so you're around like-minded people that speak English. I speak a good bit of Spanish, but honestly, I never have to use it. It's very, very, very English speaking down there. And it's
Wow.
absolutely great. I would 100% recommend that people check it out. And yeah, just make sure you do it right. You do not want to get caught by the IRS, right? Don't pretend that you can VPN down there and pretend you're trading from down there. There's cell records, they have credit card records. There's a lot of things that they can look at. And even given the current administration and kind of how things are changing with the IRS, this is one of the things that they're focusing on. So I wouldn't recommend cutting corners. I'd recommend doing it right the first time because at the end of the day, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You do have to make sacrifices to get unreal tax benefits like this, but it's not that big of a sacrifice in my mind.
No,
I
it
mean,
seems like it's punishment, not punishment.
AJ,
Exactly.
you're on the East Coast half the year, so when those snowstorms come around, I'm sure you're gonna remember having this conversation. Uh,
You got most of you guys know that I have a sideline business where I teach folks how to scuba dive. I mean, that would
hey,
be like dream right there. Come visit me at my plaza in Puerto Rico. I gotta
Rachel,
think about this.
thank you very much for joining us. I think I know I learned a lot today. I'm sure that our viewers learned a lot today. Once again, we're going to get both the links to her website and the Maximize Wealth into the chat. So if anybody wants to go check that out, thank you for your time. We appreciate the knowledge, and hopefully some of our viewers will be reaching out to get more information. We truly do appreciate it.
Rachel,
Perfect. Thank you both so much.
if anything changes, we need to have you back so that you can update us on these things.
I will
But
keep you all updated. Very exciting stuff happening. And I appreciate you both having me on.
Thank you,
absolutely.
Rachel. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Bye.
That's really interesting, Sip. That opens my mind to some things. Maybe
Well, the big
Josephina needs to go to school and learn some Spanish for a couple years.
hey, with the AI tools and the Duolingos and all that, it's not a bad idea.
No.
But the big famous expats, well, I don't know if we call them expats, are the Logan brothers, Logan
Right.
Paul and the other
Jake Paul, the
Paul,
Paul
Jake Paul.
brothers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they made it was a lot of headlines when they moved down there, and it seems as if this is the reason, for these loopholes in tax savings. So, to all of our high net worth individuals, this is something definitely for you to consider. High net worth individuals that live in cold places.
Yeah.
Hey, you'd be surprised.
Some people are thinking, they're like, you know what? There's nothing keeping me here. I was planning on moving jobs anyway. I was planning on starting my own business. I was planning on just being a full-time trader and living off of my portfolio. This would help big time. Plus, imagine inviting everybody down to, Puerto Rico to, your casa, and just having a grand old time.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
I see the cost of living differences are
it's
huge.
inexpensive. It's I actually know somebody who's looking at that right now. I've known a few people who have relocated. I actually know somebody who came back because she was afraid of the hurricane that came, about, what was it now, 7 years ago? Maybe that was the Maria one that Rachel was talking about. But, that she's itching, chomping at the bit to get back down there as well. So, that's an option. I do know mathematically, you take that 30% that's going out of your portfolio, your retail portfolio every year, and you're allowed to put that back in. That's real wealth building right there.
Yeah, and just with the evolution of globalization, it's now easier than ever to, operate from multi cities and things like that. So, big thanks to Rachel again. The link
Very
to her,
interesting topic.
I'll go ahead and throw her CPA link into the chat as well. All right, AJ, we've got about 15 minutes left in the show.
Okay.
Let's see if we can find one, some opportunities, and two, get some insights to our picks of the week. So let's go
Mhm.
ahead and start with your pick of the week. Looks like you're saying earnings play volatility crush in Bank of America, ticker symbol BAC. What are you thinking there?
Well, first of all, next week we get back into earnings season, right? The banks report next week, and then for the next 3 to 4 weeks, we've got all sorts of reporting happening. And it's looking like this is going to be a great earnings season for our calendar spread play. So here's Bank of America. I've got the chart up right here. Earnings is going to be, if I put my cursor right here, before market open on July 16th. So, you know what? Uh, on July 15th, we want to think about doing our calendar spread. Remember, a calendar spread is a trade that works on volatility crush. And what we know is leading to earnings, volatility pops up, and then the day after earnings is released and all the unknowns are now known, we always see a volatility crush. It's like clockwork. And so we look for these symbols that don't usually have any sort of movement. If we look at previous earnings that Bank of America has been through, the day after is usually a nothing burger. And so the scoop is those are the ones that are going to profit the most on calendar spreads. So my first trade on Bank of America is to look how I could do a calendar spread to profit on Bank of America's earnings play. The second one is, you will notice, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit on this particular view here. I'm going to go to 6 months. You'll notice that I have Bank of America in this trend. And so one of the things that I'm looking at as well, I'm going to use a overbought, oversold leading indicator. It's one of my favorite. It's the Williams percent R, made popular by Larry Williams. And this is one of those ones that you were talking about in the beginning of this call, Sip, about, should we trade the pullback? What the Williams percent R tells us is if we've had enough pullback to get a swing trade out of it. And you'll see right now, the Williams percent R is trading down at 93, almost 94. You see this blue number that I'm circling here with my cursor, 93. Anything below that 90 number tells you that it has pulled back enough. So what we're looking for is a confirmation that the swing is starting. And so what I look for, you can actually program one of our free indicators to do this. I'm going to do it right now in front of you. This is how you program the free indicator to identify confirmations of a swing trade. What I like to do is I actually like to change my 3-day exponential on the fast length down to a 1-day simple. That basically means the closing price. And I like to know when it crosses the 7-day simple. So by simply changing that configuration of the moving average crossing, you'll now see whenever you get the green arrow, and that's what we're looking for. When we get that green arrow, that's an end of day signal. The next day we look to trade this and take advantage of the swing trade up. You can use an option that is maybe 3 to 6 months out, maybe 1 or 2 steps in the money. That would be a stock replacement play. If you want to get really elegant, you can use an out of the money option. Again, I'd still go with the 3 to 6 month out expiration date. But yeah, those 2 trades on Bank of America. In the immediate, looking for an earnings play, volatility crush play with a calendar spread. And then for the bigger play, let's watch for a swing trade confirmation and make some money on the way up.
And if you want to see a couple more examples of the volatility rush and crush, head on over to the YouTube, go to our page, just search rush or crush. We should have a couple of examples of how to approach this in the past. With an expert on this approach, I believe a few times as previous guests. So that's the time of the year, and then maybe this is where the opportunities are as we continue to hit our head against these new highs is in these earnings plays, which I know can pan out fairly nicely.
Yep.
As we've shown in the past. So that's AJ's pick of the week, ticker symbol BAC. Now into our speed round. Let's see how speedy we can be with our speedness today. Starting in the Midwest, this is Carl out of Columbus, Ohio, interested in NU Holdings, ticker symbol NU. Is this a metals play? Holdings, what does NU do?
You're going to have to look that up for me. I know we looked at it in the past, but I'm going to look at it technically right now. So let me, I got through programming my indicator for swing trading. Let me program it. Actually, let me just use my fast MACD indicator that I like so much. Okay, so I see, in fact, let me tweak it one more way. I see my fast MACD. I've got it calculating on close. I'm going to change that. I'm going to calculate it on volume weighted average price. Give me a little bit there. Didn't really change it much. Okay, so I see a top was found. I'm not sure if on July 7th, a follow through day. If it wasn't July 7th, it might have been July 10th. So I guess what you're asking is should we be shorting new holdings or perhaps even buying some deep in the money, far out in time put options at this point? And technically, the answer would be yeah. Let me look at the option chain over here. I don't even have my options lookup tool, but I'm going to log in there very quickly. When you guys sign up for free access to this options lookup tool, you'll do the same thing. You'll log into the Trading Trainer tool portal, and then the options lookup tool will be right under trading tools. And you can type in any ticker symbol and you can go back in time and look at all the option chains. So we're looking at new holdings. And yeah, let's see what we've got here for liquidity. I'm going to go and look specifically at this October option. Oh, yeah, I pay attention to the bid and ask prices to make sure they're not too far apart, and they're not. So that tells me that people are trading this thing. There's a January option. I can find out if there's substitute options. But yeah, I think that that's what I would do. I would be prepared in order to trade some deep in the money, far out in time put options, and then profit as this goes down. and I foresee there's a heavy level of support at $12. When we hit $12, we can start thinking about selling put premium and buying protective calls, creating that income generating. I think New Holdings would be perfect for that. What is New Holdings into? Did you look that up?
International largest digital financial service provider. It looks like South America, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia are big
Hmm.
players. So not metals like I was thinking.
No, but still
But
still sounds like boring enough to be one of our premium selling plays.
yeah, at a nice little $12 price point. So thank you for that, Carl. Moving on
Yeah.
to our second name, a name that we cover on the show very frequently. David out of Scottsdale, Arizona, wants to know, hey, do we have a opportunity in Intel? INTC chips are hot these days.
hmm Well, okay. I'm looking at Intel. Um, I'm putting together a guide that people will be able to download. I'll make this guide uh, not cost anything on how to do a rainbow analysis on individual stocks. So heads up on that, guys. In the next couple of weeks, we'll make that guide available. I would do that retracement analysis on this one, David, because I think that Intel is setting up nicely to be one of those swing trading candidates. So the same analysis that I did on Bank of America for my pick of the week, I would like to see you do it there, and then use something like the Williams percent R to tell you if you've got a good enough pullback. I'm going to throw that on really quick and just look cursory. So I would wait again for the Williams percent R to pull back to below that 90 number, and then look for that 1 day crossing the 7 day simple moving average to trigger one of your trades. I also see earnings is creeping up for us on July 24th after the market close. Intel, it's hit or miss whether that might be a good volatility crush play. You'll have to start paying attention to the news headlines around Intel, but that might be an option for you too. But I'd look into this and set up on this as a potential swing trade, and follow. We've talked about it. You can go on our YouTube channel and Google how to set up swing trades, but this is what I would think on Intel. I wouldn't be selling premium right now on Intel, although it is on our watch list to do that. Instead, I'd be looking at this for possible swing trade and earnings trade place possibilities.
Yeah, and definitely probably check on some of the fundamentals just because of the sector in itself with government contracts and technology advancements and stuff. Intel has been a big player for a while, and maybe they can be making a comeback here, in 2025. So thank you for that, David. All right, moving on to our third and final name. Similar to, I think, your pick of the week, James out of Richmond,
Mm.
Virginia, wants to know Citigroup. Similar to Bank of America, do we have an opportunity here?
I would say, in fact, this is a day before mine. Uh, so wait, let me look at my calendar really quick. Today is the 11th, so Monday is the 14th. You better be ready on Monday. This looks like an earnings setup for sure. And it looks like the earnings are being released before the market opens on Tuesday. So, spend the weekend, James, doing, and you're in Richmond. So, Richmond is not just an old tobacco city, Richmond is a big banking city. So, do your research on Citigroup. And if you're going to pull the trigger with a calendar spread on Monday, I would condone that so long as you do your due diligence, and then look on Tuesday for a possible, getting out of that calendar spread. This would be an earnings play. I also could see how you would do a swing trade on this. If that Williams percent R, it's currently trading at 50, I want it to go down below 90. If it gets below 90, I'd look at Citigroup for a swing trade. So like Sip said, just like my Bank of America, but this is a day early. So earnings play potentially on Monday. And I would love to hear from you, James, if Citigroup plays out for you, so that next Friday when we have our show on options expiration day for the month of July, we can see whether or not you did well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the storyline next week's going to be earnings and financial earnings. And maybe we'll get some insights for forecasting, because I know in Q2 you and I had discussed that some of the rhetoric in the guidance was, hey, we don't know what's going to happen, tariff this, tariff that. I'm curious what that's going to look like now, and it seems as if people are starting to settle in and accept
Hmm.
the changes happening. So it'd be very interesting to see what the storyline is this week.
I'm gonna listen in on some of these calls this upcoming week and see if I can pick out any salient facts. But yeah, they had the if this then that, if this then that type discussions last quarter. We'll see where they are this quarter.
For sure. All right. So that'll be exciting. Once again, big thanks to Rachel Farris for joining us,
That was cool.
and to talk about moving to Puerto Rico to take advantage of the huge tax savings, and maybe enjoy some weather. But you're right about some of those storms. I mean, seeing the stuff that just came out of Texas really makes you appreciate normality in terms of nature. So I would definitely avoid hurricane season in that area. But it's great to see or hear the success stories, and that people are taking advantage of that. So big shout out to her. The links to her pages are in our chat. AJ, July 11th, heading into the weekend. Should we just be keeping an eye on our Truth Social to see what's going to happen? I feel like that's going to be the biggest news heading into next week until we get some of these earnings. What are you looking at?
I'm going to have these earnings trades thought out, planned out, sized out, and ready, queued up for next week. So if anybody's followed me for a hot minute, that I like to plan things out. I like to look at the worst case scenarios, build the trade around what could go wrong, so that I'm only surprised by things going right. So that's what my weekend's going to be. Plus, I'm going to be looking at all of these setups that are potential swing trades in the next couple of weeks, and I'll be setting up on those. So I actually have quite a busy weekend doing my planning.
All right, folks. And if you want a little bit of that inside access into how AJ plans, into the community, into building watch list access to things like that, indicators, head on over to the quick links page. The link is in the chat. And if you are looking for a place to start, register for free workshop is great. Free indicator suite is probably the second favorite in terms of getting you the tools that you need. And then coaching. If you want a little bit of guidance, you've got coaching there. It's available. So that's the game plan heading into the weekend. We're halfway through the year. It's summer.
Can't even believe that.
We're hitting new highs. Things are looking a little bit more optimistic than they have in the in Q2 when we were at war, multiple wars, tariff threats, but things are starting to calm down. So happy to see that. I think that'll do it for us, AJ. We've got a good game plan. We had a great show, great guests. Thank you, AJ. Thank you to everybody else for joining us. We truly do appreciate it. Feel free to show some love. Hit that like, hit that follow, hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions, you can head on over to the website. You can send us a DM. You could leave a comment, and we'll try and get back to you as quickly as we can. Otherwise, stay safe, folks. We'll see you guys next week.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning into the AJ Brown Show. If you're interested in learning more about AJ and his investing techniques, head on over to tradingtrainer.com and create your free account today. And if you're not already a subscriber to the show, hit that subscribe